Okay, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. We'll go ahead and call the committee to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Senator Hammond, Senator Hansen, Senator Pizzina, Senator Spearman, Chair Harris.
Here, please go ahead and mark Senator Hansen and Hammond present as they arrive. We've got one bill on the agenda for today, and that is AB 456, which revises provisions relating to railroads. We'll go ahead and open the hearing on that bill and invite up Assemblyman Carter and Mr. Soltero. You can go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairwoman and members of the committee. I'm Max Carter. I'm Assemblyman from District 12. And we're here to talk about AB 456, which has got to do with train safety. You know, my family is in this state because of the Union Pacific Railroad. My grandfather came here in 1942 to Las Vegas with the Union Pacific Railroad. I grew up looking at the old UP timetables and being fascinated by his obsession with watches back then, because that's what train guys did. And also listening to his stories and talking to some of modern day railroad engineers. They don't have brakemen anymore. They don't have firemen anymore. But like my grandfather had worked his way up through the ranks, I was kind of surprised and a bit concerned to hear that some of the things they did in regards to safety back in the 50s and 60s and 40s still go on today. So there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to train safety. We've seen so much in the news lately about train lengths, and you know, the big one in the news about West Palestine. Just last week, we had a train in Wisconsin, I believe it was, that dumped a bunch of cars into the Mississippi River. So what this bill is about is, first off, and I may have it out of order, but we got people to explain that. Hot boxes. Hot boxes are devices that are put on the rails that sense hot bearings, sense hot wheels, count the number of axles, and that, you know, metrics on the train. And the Union Pacific Railroad's been very good about installing them in this state. They're ahead of the curve. The problem is they don't communicate with the operator of the train anymore. They did originally, and they're designed to provide real-time communication with the man in the cab of that train, telling him how many cars there are, or if there's issues with any of the device, any of the pieces on that train. So that's part of what this bill is about. It's also about trains blocking grade level crossings with emergency vehicles, following up with trying to take and make things accessible. Those of us that live in the downtown area have been trapped at Oki, back behind Western, where the train will sit forever, it seems sometimes. This is trying to reduce that, at least for emergency vehicles. And finally, it's got a train length provision, bringing it down to a reasonable amount. The train lengths have gotten out of control. You know, 5 miles isn't uncommon in the West. On the flats out in Oklahoma and Kansas, you see them up to 7 miles long. And you're going to hear testimony from the representatives of the railroads talking about how that they self-regulate and about how that this should be with the feds. Well, that's questionable whether that preemption is valid or not. And it's about time to put up or shut up. We need to do something about this. And I think it's time for Nevada to possibly be the first in the nation to say, hey, no more. We're tired of these derailments. We're tired of our communities being put in danger. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy Soltero to walk through the bill.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Randy Saltero with Saltero Strategies, here to walk you through the parts of the bill AB 456. As the Assemblyman talked about, I just want to make your attention to several sections of this bill that we'll be talking with. Actually, I won't be talking with, but folks that have a very good knowledge of this, who I'll be introducing to you soon. First of all, Section 1.14, it does talk about the wayside detector communication system. This includes the hot box detector, hot wheel detector, dragging equipment detector, and the inaudible alarm that operates in accordance with this section. This is important, and I talk about this and all of these parts of this bill. You know, we kind of started to talk about this bill and to bring this thing forward to the legislature back in the summer. During the, once we started in this legislative session, and then you have mostly all heard about what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, where there was a derailment, and if you, as we have, talked to the people that are from East Palestine, they will tell you their property is worthless now. Their children are sick. The people are sick, and they're having to leave. So it was an unfortunate accident, but the parts of this bill all have contributing parts of this bill that we are trying to get passed here in Nevada were contributing factors to the East Palestine accident. The second part of this is, as Assemblyman said, Section 1.26 talks about railroad crossings and making them open, those processes open, so that emergency vehicles or traffic can get through when you're in rural parts of the state or in inner city parts of the state. Mr. Carter's example is excellent on that area on Western Avenue going through Las Vegas. If you've ever been to Carlin, you may have experienced where the entire city of Carlin, and you're going to hear about that from the experts. I won't go into that. And the last section, Section 1.28, talks about freight train. In this bill asks for that freight train to not exceed 7,500 feet. Again, briefly, what that means is that is what there are several studies that are being conducted and about what is a safe length for a train. If you've ever, when you relate to trucks, and I'm sure my good friend Mr. Enos will talk about, would know that sometimes when trucks are going down grades and they have problems braking, you'll see those brakes starting to get hot and maybe smoke or catch fire. That's something that happens. Imagine it happening on a train that is literally tens of thousands of tons of weight that's barreling down. And in the case with East Palestine, that train, when it began to derail, they couldn't stop it. So it would just kept going and going and going all the time, dumping these chemicals. At this point, we are going to turn this over to three experts, people that work on trains every day. Many of you have met them in the last couple of days. They've been here lobbying this bill. Some of them your constituents. Some of them, I could tell you all of them who are recognized and employees of good standing with the railroad and are responsible for the safe operation of these trains on a daily basis. So with that, and your indulgence, Assemblyman, we'll turn this over to, I call them the experts. And thank you very much for your indulgence. They have some brief statements, and then we'll be ready for your questions.
Honorable Chair Harris, Vice Chair Spearman, and esteemed members of the committee, as the Nevada State Legislative Director for the International Association of Sheet Metal Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, and a conductor and locomotive engineer with 19 years of experience, I'm here to co-present AB 456. I'm here to stress the importance of the wayside detectors, otherwise known as train defect detectors, and explain why it is crucial for Nevada to follow Ohio's recent legislation to prevent incidents like the tragic East Palestine derailment from happening in our state. Train defect detectors play a vital role in maintaining the safety of freight trains in Nevada by detecting a range of issues such as dragging equipment, leaning equipment, hot bearings and wheels, and more. These detectors are located periodically along railroad tracks. However, despite the detection of defects or inaccurate car counts, railroads are not obligated to take any action, putting the cargo, crew, and communities the train passes through at risk. On February 3rd, an oversized freight train carrying hazardous material chemicals derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, and caused a fire that lasted several days. The train defect detectors had been signaling an overheated wheel bearing, but the crew was not informed until it was too late. The incident left the town's residents in a state of complete distress and utter despair, grappling with the aftermath of the destruction that ravaged their once thriving community. National Transportation Safety Board Chair Jennifer Hamady emphasized the preventability of the derailment during a press conference on the investigation and stated that the incident highlights the pressing need for improved safety measures on our railroads. Following the East Palestine tragedy, the Federal Railroad Administration recommended that railroads improve their collection and use of data that train defect detectors to prevent destructive derailments in a safety advisory. Journal bearings are sealed components, making defects in them difficult to identify through visual inspections. Train defect detectors can play an essential role in the early detection of bearing defects. However, their effectiveness depends on maintenance standards, the establishment of safe thresholds at which to act on hot bearing detector alerts, and strict adherence to procedures that prescribe actions to be taken. AB 456 enhances the safety of Nevada's railroads and protects our communities by requiring the train crew to be notified immediately when a detector alert is triggered and the presence of any additional cars that may contain hazardous materials are on the train. This notification will allow the crew to take appropriate actions to prevent potential hazards and ensure the safety of the cargo, crew, and communities it passes through. Moreover, it will mandate the train defect detector systems be installed at intervals of approximately 10 miles. However, if the natural terrain necessitates a greater distance, the systems may be placed up to a maximum of 15 miles apart. There are currently no regulations governing train defect detectors, and there are no standardized official thresholds of a hot bearing temperature for the railroads to claim preemption, providing the ability for potential safety hazards to be fixed at the state level. Allowing a train carrying hazardous materials to continue its journey after setting off a hot bearing alert or providing inaccurate axle counts is a dangerous practice that poses a severe risk to public safety. While East Palestine is a relatively small town in comparison, if a similar event were to occur in a populated area such as Las Vegas or Reno, it could have far-reaching impact on the tourism industry and the surrounding communities. The train defect detector portion of AB 456 is in accordance with the latest safety guidelines proposed by industry experts, further solidifying its significance in averting ravaging derailments and other potential disasters that could wreak havoc in Nevada neighborhoods. In conclusion, the safety of our communities is of utmost importance. By passing this bill in its entirety, Nevada will be joining the ranks of Ohio and several other states that are taking recent proactive measures to safeguard their railroads and prevent any such devastating incidents from occurring. Thank you.
Can you just state your name for the record, please?
Jason Doring for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Gabe Christensen, and I'm the Assistant Nevada State Legislative Director for SMART TD, a freight rail conductor and locomotive engineer with 19 years' experience. I'm here to provide my testimony on AB 456, and I thank you for the opportunity. The introduction of precision scheduled railroading in the last 5 years has led to a significant increase in train lengths in Nevada, with some now exceeding 15,000 feet and weighing up to 30,000 tons. This is more than double the previous standard and is causing significant issues, as the equipment and tracks were never designed to accommodate trains of this size. The massive forces generated by these trains as they start, stop, slow down, and speed up lead to metal fatigue in the couplings between cars and track wear, increasing the likelihood of derailments. The length and weight of these trains also magnify braking distances and increase response times in case of accidents, especially in areas where the conductor has to walk the length of the train or on uneven ballast. The increase in train length has resulted in a direct correlation with the frequency and severity of derailments. In 2019, Nevada experienced 2 alarming derailments attributed to excessive train weight and length. Furthermore, there are almost daily reports of new derailments across the country. These incidents pose a significant risk to the communities and environment, particularly when hazardous chemicals are being transported. A derailment near a town could put hundreds to even thousands of lives at risk, and the environmental impact would be unimaginable. Excessive length trains also cause congestion in the yards, sidings, and main lines they operate on, leading to increased blocked crossings in towns and cities. Entire neighborhoods and even towns are being cut in half for hours at a time, making it difficult for emergency responders to get through. The train crew has no way of knowing if an ambulance, police officer, or fire department is trying to cross the tracks to respond to an emergency. The length of these trains can delay emergency responders, which could mean the difference between life and death in the case of a medical emergency or a fire. It is crucial for railroad companies to take the FRA or the Federal Railroad Administration's recent safety advisory seriously. This was issued on Thursday, April 27th. The advisory encourages railroads to take steps to address the complexities of operating long trains. This non-binding advisory comes in the wake of 3 recent derailments involving trains with more than 200 cars, a length of 12,250 feet or more, and weight over 17,000 tons. It is essential to ensure that all necessary precautions are taken to prevent future accidents and ensure the safety of passengers and employees. The dangers associated with long and heavy trains cannot be overstated. As the length of trains in Nevada and across the country continues to increase, so do the risks to public safety and the environment. We have already seen the consequences of this trend in the form of more frequent and severe derailments, congested yards, and blocked crossings that hinder emergency response efforts. It is imperative that action is taken to address these issues, and I urge the committee to prioritize the safety of Nevada's communities and emergency responders by enacting measures that regulate the length and weight of trains. And thank you for the opportunity to provide my testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. For the record, I'm Matt Parker with Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. I have submitted a written testimony on Nellis that I encourage you all to look at for a little bit more detail, but just briefly today, this bill, AB 456, everybody's heard East Palestine. You've heard it here today, and it's the incident that really has raised public consciousness all around the country with regard to railroad safety and railroad accidents. And much of what's in this bill comes from factors that are being looked at in that accident and things that we can do to prevent accidents like that in the future. Just briefly on the train defect detectors, what you see there in that bill is some very well written, very well thought out, very well written standards for the installation and maintenance of this equipment. They're standards that don't exist right now. I have participated in meetings with personnel from the Federal Railroad Administration where we have expressed to them concerns over the fact that there's data we used to get as operators of trains from those detectors that the railroad took away several years ago. We no longer get that data. And the answer that we get back from the FRA personnel is, we agree with you, but we have no regulation we can enforce. So all we can do is suggest to the railroads that they put that stuff back. This bill gives you the opportunity to fix that problem and enhance the safety that is associated with these detectors and the data that's provided to us so that we can conduct the train operations in a safer function. With regard to train length, twice now in the month of April, the Federal Railroad Administration issued safety advisories to the railroads regarding long trains and the operation of them. They are now looking at this. It's been 6-7 years now since the railroads really started pursuing these long trains. In the case here in Nevada, trains upwards to 15,000 feet. And they're looking now and they're seeing a pattern with some of these accidents that's related to the length and weight of this train and the way the cars are arranged in the train. And they've told the carriers that they want them to take a look at this and make some adjustments to things they're doing, because they've identified this as a primary or secondary cause in a number of derailments. These safety advisories are helpful in that they affirm the position that we've had for a long time, that there are definite safety concerns associated with the operation of trains of such length. However, they stop short of taking any kind of firm action to require the railroads to actually do something about it. And again, in this bill, it would establish a 7,500-foot cap on the length of trains in this state, which would enhance the safety. A lot of what's being looked at by the FRA, again, has to do with weight and the forces in the train that go along with all these cars that are in the train. And by limiting the train length, we reduce that weight, we reduce the forces that are in the train, and thereby eliminate some of these hazards of derailments now that are being involved as associated with these trains. We know this because up until about 6 or 7 years ago, we didn't run trains longer than 7,500 feet typically. That was pretty much the limit. And we did not have the problems that we see now with derailments and mechanical failures that are associated with the length and weight of the train. So we know that's a safe way to go, and that's why it's included in this bill. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here today and testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, committee members, I'd like to make sure everyone has a platform to ask questions, but we've got to make sure we keep this on track. So please, I'm working on it. So please, keep your questions limited here. We've got we have Congressman Horsford at 4:30, so. Okay, Senator Pizzina.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I promise I'll keep it to one question. Thank you for the presentation. If Nevada were to adopt a cap of 7,500 feet on train length, how would this affect trains coming in from other states? And would this require railroads to either increase or decrease the size of the trains that enter the state? Thank you.
For the record, my name's Gabe Christensen. The current operating practices that the railroads have adopted, basically every train that touches the state sets out cars, picks up cars, so there wouldn't be no additional delay to the transportation. I mean, they're already doing that now. One instance we have is they actually combine 2 grain trains together in the Midwest. And once they hit Portola, California, which is just across the state line, they're broken into 2 separate trains again because they're not allowed to run trains of that size down the Feather River Canyon. So they're already doing that in a lot of places. So it wouldn't increase anything that they're doing already.
Chair Harris, if I may add to that for the record, Matt Parker. These trains, like I said, the length of the trains that we're seeing now is something that's new. It's only been happening within the last couple of years. And I can tell you that from working with trains that were smaller, as Mr. Christensen pointed out, these trains typically drop off and pick up cars when they come into the terminals in this state. And having worked the jobs that did that for an extended period of time, I could tell you that when these trains were shorter and we were handling fewer cars, we could bring a train into the terminal at Sparks and drop off cars out of that train, reposition locomotives in that train, pick up cars, and have that train ready to go out of the terminal in 45 minutes. With the excessive amount of cars that we're handling now, it takes upwards to 3 hours to do this. And the reason is because you can't move as fast, you have to move slower. And this is something we learned through a trial and error. Another thing that was addressed in the Federal Railroad Administration safety advisories was the training. The railroads have put these long trains out there and they haven't provided us any training as to how to run them. And at the beginning, there was a lot of trial and error where we saw derailments that were caused because locomotive engineers had used certain techniques for years in handling these. And now all of a sudden they're handling so much more weight and everything that the techniques that have been successful for years are actually causing derailments. And they had to learn that through the school of hard knocks, so to speak.
Senator Hansen.
I didn't even say anything.
Okay, just kidding. Vice Chair Spearman.
Fine, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just have a couple of succinct questions. I keep hearing safety and not trained or not familiar with or something like that. So talk to me about the training that, is there a difference in the training between what the trains, the length of the trains used to be and what they are now?
Jason Doring for the record. Again, all three of us up here are certified conductors and locomotive engineers, and through our training, when I went through engineer training, again, about that time, a long train was 7,500 feet. Working as an engineer now, I have never once been trained how to operate these long and heavy trains. Never.
Follow-up. So is there a significant difference? I mean, you identified a delta in the training, so what's the difference? And how does that relate to safety?
Absolutely. Again, when we hired out, most of our trains were rolling down the rails with locomotives on the head end of the train. So you would only see a train with power on the head end. They've gotten so big and so long now that power is now distributed throughout the train. So you may see locomotives on the head end, a couple sets of power through the middle of the train, and then some on the rear. So we're constantly having to monitor what those locomotives are doing in conjunction with our head end. While the rail may look flat and the territory might look like it's all even, a lot of it's undulating, so when we're trying to maybe pull on the head end, or we're trying to give it more gas, I guess you could say, if you're pressing the pedal on a car, we could be actually braking somewhere else in the train. So we've never actually been taught how to do that per se. We can read, I guess, in our operating rules on suggestions on how to do this, but being taught by union or any of these carriers, it just doesn't happen.
So, Mr. Park, I think you mentioned there was, in April, something happened, there was a derailment. Can you give me a little bit more on that, please?
What I was speaking of was April, was that twice we saw the Federal Railroad Administration come out with safety advisories regarding the length of trains. At first, they were looking at 6 specific derailments where they had determined that it was the weight, length of the train, and the arrangement of the cars was either a primary or a secondary contributing factor to these derailments. And they put the industry on notice that we think you need to look at your practices here, because obviously we are having accidents because of this, and therefore there's some adjustments that need to be made. And then there was another advisory, and in that advisory, it looked additionally at the handling of the long trains, and training was one of the things they said. And what the FRA specifically said was, you cannot take a locomotive engineer who's been trained to run a 6,000-foot train and just take them and put them on a 12,000-foot train and expect them to know what to do. They have to have some training. But that's actually what the railroad actually did. They didn't provide us with any training on how to run these. I just show up one day, and now instead of being 6,000 feet, my train's 12,000 feet. And I had to take the knowledge that I have and everything and try to apply that and figure it out on my own. And I'm sorry, I mean, I said this, but this is Matt Parker for the record.
Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot to unpack in this bill. There's a lot of things in here, and I appreciate the bill itself because it's talking about safety, public safety. We don't want to see these kinds of occurrences happen over and over again. But I will say that in hearing your testimony, I've heard you use the term long train. So I'm gonna go to the long train, or the length of the train part of the bill, if you will. I know there's already been one question asked, but I'm going to go back to a statement you made. You said that there are other states that are looking at the same thing, trying to get to the issue of public safety and trying to make sure that we minimize these kinds of incidences from happening in the future. You mentioned Ohio. But then you said you stopped short of naming any other states. So you said several others. So I guess, I'd really like to know how many others? When you say several, is that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 others? And in that, of the others, Ohio and all the others, are they talking about putting the same language, all these different components in it, because like I said, this bill's got a lot to unpack. So just one component is the length of the train. The other one is the research, the data that you're collecting, all the other things. Is the length of the train something that each one of these states is contemplating right now?
Jason Doring for the record. Senator, I'm the one who mentioned Ohio. So recently, Ohio was the state that just passed regulation dealing with the wayside detectors. In that bill, they also mirrored our two-person crew legislation that we passed in 2019. As far as the number of states that are currently proposing train length legislation, I think we're up to 14 right now, with a few that are attempting to do it through their administrative code. But a few are stalled in committee, and other, there may be lower house, but they are trying to do that right now.
And then the follow-up would, if you don't mind, if the follow-up question would be, so far I've heard you talk about years ago, just a few years ago, a long train, the definition would have been 7,500 feet. And then you said 12,000. Then you said 15,000 feet is a long train. These are all terms or lengths that you've mentioned so far in your testimony. So, as somebody who's the layperson coming to this, I don't know exactly what the definition for a long train is. And so these other states, these 14 other states that you just mentioned, are they all contemplating a length of 7,500, or is there a different amount on each one of those?
Jason Doring for the record. The only other state that's contemplating 7,500 right now currently is Washington. And the reason why we did that is just looking at our infrastructure, looking at the length of the sidings that we have, but most importantly, we're taking in consideration of the terrain as well. So while these train lengths are also really large, it is also in correlation with the weight of the train. So while Nevada may not seem like it, we hold some of the most treacherous terrain in the country as far as where our trains traverse. We have Donner Pass, and then on the southern part of the state, we go through the Rainbow Canyon near Caliente, and then south of town through the Mojave Preserve on Sema Hill. So we just, each state was taking a look at their different terrains and the infrastructure that included.
And the reason why I asked this question, I think I only have one more probably, is in those other states, because you mentioned 14, there's 14, and so Washington, the state of Nevada, are contemplating 7,500. It'd be very interesting to me to find out what the other ones are contemplating, because one of the first things that Assemblyman Carter mentioned was we need to be it would be nice to be the first ones in the nation. Being first is good sometimes, and sometimes being first is not always good. Because now you have to worry about some unintended consequences that you have to deal with that nobody else has to deal with. They get to watch you and see what happens to your state when you pass something. And so I'm really very curious about what the other train lengths that they're contemplating. Again, because I've heard 12,000, I've heard 15,000, I've heard 7,500, I've heard 6,000. I just want to know what they're also contemplating, because now all of a sudden you're going to have a patchwork. And I don't know if it's all across the United States, or at least those 14 states.
Jason Doring for the record. Besides the two states that are running proposed 7,500 foot in length, the other states are running 8,500 foot.
8,500. Okay, thank you.
Gabe Christensen for the record. I also like to add that recently the Federal Railroad Administration and the National Surface Transportation Board put out statements saying that train length would be better taken care of at a state level, because a blanket train length requirement for every state may not work, because where our terrain is mountainous and we have a lot of curves and everything like that, the Midwest is flat. So a longer train length may be all right there where it isn't here. So they're even saying that it should be tackled at a state level.
And I can appreciate that. I mean, uniformity sometimes is, cookie cutter is not always good, but it is kind of nice to get some sort of idea from the FRA to kind of give us an idea of what they were looking at, contemplating. So I do appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Christensen. I'm done, Madam Chair.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you. I didn't even ask again. It's very kind of you. Actually, I have a bunch of things. Assemblyman Carter and I share one thing in common. My grandfather came here in 1925 and was a boilermaker on the railroad in Sparks. In fact, Marlene out there and I are both railroaders, Sparks railroaders. Woo woo, right? So that goes back a few years. So we have a real extensive railroad background. I enjoyed visiting with both of you. They're both my constituents, by the way. So, you know, in fact, my grandfather was a labor leader on the railroad in Sparks, Boilermakers Union. And then my great-grandfather, who I'm named after, was an engineer on the railroad. That was in Iowa, so I don't know if that was UP or Southern Pacific. So extensive railroad background. Grew up in Sparks. The number of derailments in my lifetime, though, are almost, I can't even think of any in Sparks and Reno, to be honest with you. And now you mentioned in the last 6 or 7 years, they've added the links of the trains. As you and I discussed, there was only one derailment that I remember. That was over by Winnemucca about 20 years or so ago, when I assume they weren't running the extra long ones. The question I have is, do you guys actually have any, you know, with automobiles, it's how many accidents per million miles or something. Is there something similar that they use in railroad testing, studying? You know, you guys have mentioned that in your opinion, there has been an increase in the number of derailments, but compared to the 40s, 50s, 60s that you guys were mentioning earlier, is there actually any data that backs that up?
Jason Doring for the record. I'll provide you the data. I don't have it right here readily available, but I can get you the actual statistics. But Gabe and Matt can talk to you a little bit more about the derailments that have happened up here in northern Nevada.
Well, I understand that the ones that have happened. What I'm wondering is this below average? Is it now expanded significantly over what was in, say, the 70s or some other window of time? I mean, we've been using the railroads in Nevada a long time, and in fact, if anything, the volume of traffic seems to have gone down in my lifetime. So I'm just wondering, you know, compared to other decades, are we above average, below average in the number of derailments currently?
Gabe Christensen for the record. So the trouble with finding out about derailments is the railroad self-reports those. And if it's not a certain dollar amount, they don't report them to the FRA and the powers that be. There are derailments. There was a derailment yesterday in Fernley, Nevada. That's probably not going to get reported, but there was a derailment. Wheels went on the ground. There was a derailment a week or two ago in Sparks Yard. There's constant derailments just because they're not televised, because houses aren't on fire, people aren't being evacuated. There are constant derailments. There were a few pretty major incidents just this year so far. There was a lot of derailments, but major ones were January 20th in Winnemucca, Nevada. There was a train, I'd have to look, but it was well over the 7,500 foot mark that we're looking for, you know, upward over 10,000 feet or more. It derailed, and I just went by those cars that derailed yesterday morning on my way back from Elko on a train. They're still there. Thankfully, they weren't hazardous material cars, but they're sitting in a populated area in a farmer's field out in Winnemucca, Nevada. February 20th, this wasn't a derailment, but it was because of the length of a train. A train in Carlin, Nevada broke into 3 pieces, and it was a key train or a high hazard train. So it had the majority of the freight on that train was hazardous material. It was classified as a high hazard train, what the FRA would consider. It broke in 3 spots right next to the Humboldt River in Carlin, Nevada. March 7th, we had an incident that was mirrored what happened in East Palestine. A train was going from Elko to Portola, California, and it went over 2 wayside detectors, hot box detectors that we have in our bill. The crew was never alerted to an increase in temperature on the bearings. When you have a bearing that increases in temperature, it's not something that just happens immediately. It's over time from wear and everything like that. So it went over 2 detectors. The crew was never alerted. 5 miles after the second detector it went over, a bearing pack from the wheel shot off the train, started a brush fire in multiple locations, started somebody's front yard on fire, and subsequently derailed multiple cars. The reason it wasn't worse was because this was a unit train. So all the cars were the same type of car. And we were very, very lucky that that's the kind of train it was, because there are less in-train forces when that happens. So rather than it stacking up like we saw in East Palestine, it sat down on the ground and just derailed more gently than it would have if it was mixed freight.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I know, Madam Chair, you're looking at the clock. I'd like to expand on that at some point, because, yeah, undoubtedly, over time, there's always been problems. Anything mechanical will have problems. It's the quantity. Has it gone up? And on the trains that you mentioned, were they all 15,000 footers? Were some of them 7,500? I mean, is there data to show that the longer train consistently has issues in comparison, especially to past decades, where, you guys somebody's been keeping data somewhere? So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I wish you had a little more time, because this needs to be kind of vetted a little more, but I got it. I see you looking at me.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to testimony. We'll try and get in as much as we can. I'm really hoping to not have to come back after Congressman Horsford's speech, so please do use your express version of your testimony. That would be much appreciated.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Fran Alvarez, and I'm here today representing the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Does Nevada have the authority to regulate train lengths? Title 49 U.S. Code 20106 grants the right to adopt or continue, enforce a law, regulation, or order related to railroad safety or security until the Secretary of Transportation or Secretary of Homeland Security prescribes a regulation or issues an order covering the subject matter of the state requirement. A state may adopt or continue in force as additional or more stringent law, regulation, or order related to railroad safety or security. The state is well within its rights to impose regulation on train lengths, but should train lengths standards be set by the DOT or the FRA? In 2019, the Government Accountability Office released a study acknowledging the problem, but we are still without a solution. Keith Washington, Deputy Secretary of the Department of Transportation, concluded, a one-size-fits-all approach is not the best solution. State and local governments are better positioned to address the unique road and emergency service characteristics in a particular state. If meaningful action is to be taken to address standards in the name of public safety, it will need to come from the state level, and the DOT has stated as such. Nevada is a large, unique state served nearly exclusively by a single railroad monopoly. It would be a dereliction of duty to not set reasonable standards on a company so willing to experiment with safety of Nevada residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, and I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. And on behalf of over 150,000 members and 120 unions, we are in full support of this bill. You know, I'd have to say that many times I've been watching the news, and my frustration, I yell at the TV because I go, oh my God, how does this keep happening? Why is nobody doing anything about it? So I would love to thank this bill sponsor for finally getting to work and doing something about it. So thank you very much.
I forgot to mention, you get an extra minute if you use a train pun in your commentary.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Harris, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tom Dunn. I'm a District Vice President for the Professional Firefighters of Nevada. The PFFN is in support of AB 456. Since I last testified on a railroad safety bill in 2019, there have been 2 large train derailments in Nevada, one in June of 2019 outside of Wells, and the second in July of 2019 outside of Caliente. In 2022, there were more than 1,000 train derailments, averaging 3 per day. As we have seen in recent months, train derailments have become a national focus after East Palestine. A similar derailment could have catastrophic consequences in almost any railroad town in Nevada, to include Las Vegas, Verdi, Reno Sparks, and the other towns along the I-80 corridor to Wendover. As plans are being implemented to create an inland port in the inland port of entry in Fernley, Northern Nevada will see an exponential increase in rail traffic as the facility is placed into operation. This is a public safety issue due to the increasing length and freight being transported. In Reno, we've had multiple people struck by trains over the past 2 years, and regardless of the speed of the train, it has the ability to block multiple crossings prior to stopping, creating public safety delays due to having to reroute or dispatch additional resources to access a scene safely or any other call for service that is blocked by that train. Train derailments could overwhelm both public safety and public health resources, especially in smaller communities. It is time and resource consuming to attempt to mitigate the hazmat and environmental impacts of a derailment, and a derailment can potentially lead to a wildland component in most of our counties, which would require the response of our federal cooperators. It is beyond time for this issue to be addressed, and Nevada cannot wait for the federal government to act any longer. Finally, as a plug to support your local PBS station, I encourage everyone here to watch the Nova episode, Why Trains Crash. And with that, Madam Chair, I will not derail your meeting with Congressman Horsford.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis. I'm with Communication Workers of America. We fully support this bill, and in case you're wondering why, many times the pole lines follow the easements of rails. My members are up on either climbing the pole or up on bucket trucks on those poles. If that train tips while one of my members there's nowhere for them to go. So we strongly support this bill.
Good afternoon, Paul Cather with the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. In order to keep the schedule on the rails, I'll just ditto the other testifiers. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. My name is John Abel, Government Affairs Director for the LVPPA. I would love to keep chugging along, but in the interest of brevity, I will say we support this bill in its full. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I am the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are here today in support of AB 456, installation of equipment intent on making our railways safer for the engineers and public should be supported. If the recent derailments could have been prevented by proactive measures, it would be worth any time and effort. Stopping and splitting trains to allow emergency vehicles through just makes sense, especially when we're talking about trains that can be over a mile long. These types of technologies are proving to reduce train accidents. KNPR recently reported that the rate of train accidents has decreased 44% since 2000 because of technology invested in. The country averaged 3 derailments per day currently, and one bad derailment like in Ohio can have a catastrophic consequence. My husband is actually a safety professional and has worked with trains in his workplaces. As I prepared for this testimony today, he said to me, "From experience, those rail cars are in terrible condition, which puts any worker, whether rail or otherwise, at risk. If this pulls one car off the track, that saves lives. It's worth it. Please support this important bill." Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff. Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers, and a member of the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. I don't know anything about trains, but let me keep you on track. You have in front of you a U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Railroad Administration Safety Advisory that was submitted for publication 6 days ago. On page 11, it talks about blocked public highway rail grade crossings and the problems to law enforcement, fire, and EMTs in getting where they have to go when they got to sit there for more than 25 football fields to go by at less than 10 miles an hour. That's a problem. All the other stuff I don't know anything about. What I do know about is my guys and gals have got to get to their points of rounds. They got to get to their calls. This causes them to have problems. That causes public safety. If it's a public safety issue, that's why I'm here. I don't know anything about trains, but I'm here for public safety. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Troyce, T-R-O-Y-C-E, Krumme, K-R-U-M-M-E. I am the current Vice Chairman of the Las Vegas Police Managers and Supervisors Association. I also believe I am the police entourage caboose coming along, and we are testifying in support of this bill for several of the reasons that have already been mentioned. Thank you.
Is that the first time anyone's ever referred to you as a caboose?
It won't be the last time. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marlene Lockhart, and as Senator Hansen well knows, once a railroader, always a railroader. Right. I'm representing SEIU 1107 today, and we support this measure for safety reasons for our communities. And taking a look at this in and doing some research, it reminded me of the days when we were in so much opposition to placing the nuclear waste dump in Nevada. And one of the primary concerns was because it would be shipped by rail into Nevada. And at the time, if you think about it, to think that we'd have the highest toxic waste known sitting in the middle of a rail yard, potentially, of Las Vegas, the economic engine of Nevada, just seemed like the world was nuts that we'd even contemplate it. And now, as events have demonstrated, you never know what is going to happen. And the safer that our trains can be, and to ensure the public safety, and especially in populous areas, we don't know, just a matter of minutes can have it end up in the desert or in the middle of Las Vegas. So we support this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm James Becker. I've been a railroad conductor in Sparks, Nevada for almost 20 years. I once was a raider, now I'm a railroader. I would like to give you a couple examples of incidents that have occurred in the last month that would have been prevented if this bill was already law. April 27th, a couple days ago, Carlin, Nevada, all the crossings blocked for multiple hours during the midday. April 28th, Elko, Nevada, medical examiner was unable to access a body for 3 hours until I personally moved a train to open the only crossing to grant him access to the body. On April 6th, 2023, at Winnemucca, Nevada, there was a wheel bearing that burnt off exactly as in East Palestine and as Mr. Christensen spoke of in Biawawi just weeks prior. This train was luckily entirely made up of loads of coal. Yes, we do ship loads of coal still. When this bearing failed, it sparked multiple fires that the Winnemucca Volunteer Fire Department struggled to access due to blocked crossings. Fortunately, this derailment occurred in the middle of town, not 7 miles later at the Cyanco cyanide plant. The train crew was not given any advance warning due to the lack of the wayside detectors. If this bill was law, this derailment would have absolutely been prevented. I urge each of you to support AB 456. I would like to leave the committee with a simple math equation. A 3-mile-long train pulling into a yard at 10 miles an hour will block a crossing for 18 minutes. Passing this bill will reduce that blockage to 9 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Emilio Gonzalez. I have been a locomotive engineer and a Teamster for 24 years. I strongly urge the committee to support Assembly Bill 456 to help keep our community safe and allow first responders not to delay in responding in life or death emergencies because of blocked crossings due to train lanes. On a regular occurrence, we block main road crossings with trains carrying hazardous materials, making it impossible for first responders to assist in life or death situations. I have personally watched an ambulance with their lights flashing, not able to go through crossings because the train I was operating was too long to clear the path. I have completely blocked one side of the city in Lovelock, Battle Mountain, Carlin, due to train length size. Thank you for your time and commitment to keeping our beautiful state safe.
So if you didn't hear that, that was the bell, and we have to go to the floor. So if you guys could keep it really quick so I can also get our guest in Las Vegas, and then we can pause for a break.
For the record, my
Break.
name is Ethan Christensen.
Oh, no credit for that one, okay.
I've been employed with the railroad for nearly 13 years. I'm the union representative for Switchman in Sparks, Nevada. I've worked as a switchman for the majority of my career. I support AB 456. As a switchman, one of our responsibilities is working over length trains, meaning a 3-man switch crew performs tasks such as adding rail cars for delivery to other train stations and removing rail cars scheduled for delivery to various industries in northern Nevada. The risk involved with performing these work events with excessive train lengths is unnecessary and completely preventable by actions required by this bill. Certain railroad cars have not been engineered for movements within these excessive length trains. These cars move in ways that create a risk for incidents when moved in directions they are not designed for when extreme weights and forces are applied. I thank you for your time.
Hello, my name's Steve McGee. I've been with a railroad for over 2 years now. I was involved in a catastrophic derailment in the Sparks yard just over a year ago. This was directly related to the excess train length in which it would have been prevented, and similar incidents in the future can be prevented if AB 456 is passed.
Okay, let's hop on down to Las Vegas for testimony and support. And please keep it as quick as you can.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Harris and members of the committee. My name is Robert Sumlin, Robert Sumlin, and I am representing the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge SC 711 in Las Vegas, Nevada. We strongly urge that the committee support this bill. May 5th is not only Cinco de Mayo, or my favorite son's birthday, happy birthday, and is also the birth date of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, which started off as a railroad union. Thank you.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Alfonso Lopez. I represent the sheet metal and air railroad transportation workers, and I strongly urge your support for this bill, for the city and legislature to be proactive instead of reactive and not waiting for another Palestinian incident. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, folks, we're going to have to take a break here. When we come back, we will try and get support testimony on the phone. Actually, let's see if we can get support testimony on the phone in real quick. Is there anyone on the phone, BPS, to testify in support?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 456, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Harris and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Liz Sorensen. I'm the president of Nevada State AFL-CIO. I'm strongly in support of AB 456, and I urge this committee to do the same and support the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We've got 4 more callers, so I'm hoping they will follow instructions as well as you all did and try and keep it short so we can get their support on the record. Next caller, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and committee. For the record, my name is Edward Goodrich, Goodrich, representing the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 363 in Reno. We are in support of AB 456 and strongly urge the committee to pass this legislation. I've just got to say, wow, 1.6 miles to 3.21 miles long, just, simple math. And it's not just a safety issue, but imagine the frustration of any person who gets stuck waiting for those trains. They're going to remember that frustration. I thank the committee for its time.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the committee. My name is Janet Carter, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Toyabe chapter of the Sierra Club, and we support AB 456. And for all the reasons that have been mentioned, we're not going to take your time or get the chair steamed up because she's worried about making that other talk. But I just want to say that in addition to the safety concerns, we're concerned about the environmental damage that can happen from the type of derailments that this bill can help to prevent. We don't want to see what happened in Ohio happen here in Nevada. So we strongly support AB 456, and we urge this committee to vote yes on this bill. And thank you.
Good afternoon. I would just like to thank Chairman Harris and the committee for their time. My name is Andrew Rivas. For the record, I'm with the Teamsters Local 533 in Reno, Nevada. I strongly support AB 456. I urge the committee to support this bill in its entirety as well. It is absolutely a matter of public safety, and having worked in Northern Nevada in the mining industry at the sodium cyanide plant outside of Winnemucca, I can tell you the chemicals that are coming on rails into Nevada, especially Northern Nevada, all along the Humboldt River, are very dangerous for everybody. And this is not something that any of us should be taking lightly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Harris and the members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dion Klug, DIONNEKLUG. Represent the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 711, and I second everybody else's response and urge you to adopt this bill. Thank you.
Okay,
There
I
are
think.
no additional callers to provide support at this time.
Thank you so much. That concludes the support testimony. When we come back, we will do opposition, but just so that the record is accurate, I want to allow everyone who is in the room in opposition to be able to go ahead and just stand, and we'll get a quick count. Okay, okay. Let's let the record reflect that there are 7 people in the room in opposition. Can't count the phone testimony quite yet, but we'll get there. Anyone in Las Vegas to testify in opposition for this bill? If you want to stand, we'll make sure you get counted. Okay, so we've got 7 in person here in Carson at least. And we will get the phone testimony and more in-person testimony when we come back. Our security guards are here to drag us down, standing outside the window. Let's all hope the congressman doesn't get stage fright. Huh? Anybody? No? Okay. All right, we'll be in recess till call the chair.
Committee will be about its business. The Assembly will come back to order. The members of the Senate are invited to chairs in the Assembly. The Secretary of the Senate will call the Senate roll.
Senator Buck, Senator Canizaro, Senator Daley, Senator Dunyate, Senator Dondero Loop, Senator Flores, Senator Goycochea, Senator Hammond, Senator Hansen, Senator Harris, Senator Krasner, Senator Lang, Senator Neal, Senator Wynn, Senator Orangehall, Senator Pizzina, Senator Scheibel, Senator Severs-Gansert, Senator Spearman, Senator Stone, Senator Titus.
The Chief Clerk of the Assembly will call the Assembly roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson, Assemblywoman Backus, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod, Assemblywoman Brown May, Assemblyman Carter, Assemblywoman Cohen, Assemblywoman Considine, Assemblyman DeLong, Assemblywoman Dickman, Assemblyman De Silva, Assemblywoman Duran, Assemblywoman Gallant, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Assemblywoman Gorlo, Assemblyman Gray, Assemblyman Gurr, Assemblyman Hafen, Assemblywoman Hanson, Assemblywoman Hardy, Assemblyman Hibbets, Assemblywoman Howdigi, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblyman Koenig, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, Assemblywoman Marzola, Assemblyman MacArthur, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, Assemblyman C.H. Miller, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, Assemblywoman Mosca, Assemblywoman Newby, Assemblyman Wynn, Assemblyman O'Neill, Assemblyman Orentlicker, Assemblywoman Peters, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, Assemblywoman Taylor, Assemblywoman Thomas, Assemblywoman Torres, Assemblyman Watts, Assemblyman Urick, Speaker Yeager.
Here. I will now appoint a committee of two consisting of Senator Spearman and Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno to wait upon United States Representative Stephen Horsford and escort him into the Assembly chamber. The committee will be about its business. The appointed committee will escort Representative Horsford to the Chief Clerk's rostrum. Everyone please rise.
Good evening. Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be back here. I want to thank Speaker Steve Yeager and Majority Leader Nicole Canasaro for accepting my request to address the Nevada Legislature. Thank you to our Supreme Court justices, our state constitutional officers, and all of you for taking the time. I know this is a busy time, a month to go before Sine Die, and it's a great honor to be here as you commemorate the beginning of Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And I know there was a basketball game last night. I heard there may be some sore members. And while the Democrats may have come up a little short, it's great to see the camaraderie of that game and the charity that you support continue. You know, it's great to be back here at the Nevada State Legislature. My first opportunity to serve in this body was as a legislative intern back in 1993 while attending college at the University of Nevada, Reno. I recall the opportunities that internship afforded me to learn the importance and the role that this body plays and that each of you contribute to making the state of Nevada and the people in it better. I also recall not having a proper tie and literally being supported by some mentors who took me down the street to the local store to buy one so that I could come on the House floor. Years later, I would return to the legislature, becoming only the fourth African American elected in the state Senate and then the first Black Senate Majority Leader. Fortunately, I may have been the first, but not the last. And it's great to see my Attorney General here, Aaron Ford, for all of his great work. But during the 6 special sessions and 4 regular sessions that I served, we were able to accomplish great work. Work that you all are continuing to do and that you're doing right now. And I know, again, you got 30 days to go or more or less. So I'm not going to keep you long because I know you're tired and ready to continue that great work. But I want to underscore, you're all public servants. The staff that serve along with you to make this institution work, the great people of the state of Nevada. And I want to start by saying thank you for your service and for everything that you do for the state of Nevada. I'm now in my 3rd consecutive term and 4th overall serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I'm honored to have been elected chair of the Congressional Black Caucus for the 118th session. The CBC is now comprised of 58 members, the largest in our history. It's representatives of representatives and senators that are all across this country from every region and ideological perspective. We are often cited as the conscience of the Congress because we are able to work with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to remind each other of the real and human impact of the legislative proposals that we work to advance, from health care to reproductive justice, from veterans and military budgets to the investments in nutrition and retirement security for our seniors. Now, I'm now 4 months into my new term, and while it's keeping me quite busy, but I'm also really honored to be able to advance issues from voting rights to housing affordability to equitable job creation and economic opportunity to achieving public safety, whether from gun violence to police accountability, confronting discrimination against anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate. Because all of us should agree, regardless of party, that all of our communities should be safe. Now, in the last Congress, we were able to accomplish many great legislative victories for our nation and right here for Nevada, like the bipartisan Safer Communities Law. Now, we have a real crisis in our nation, and sadly, right here in Nevada. The gun violence epidemic is taking countless lives, many of them of our young people, inflicting great trauma on our community and our families. Pew Research reports that the number of children younger than 18 killed by guns has increased by 50% from 2019 to 2021. Children 12 to 17 accounted for 86% of all gun deaths for those younger than 18 in 2021. 33 Nevada children aged 19 and younger died from guns in 2019. Now, many of you know my personal story. I lost my father to gun violence when I was at college. I was a freshman. He was working at a convenience store when someone came in with a gun and shot him. I never got to say goodbye or to tell him that I loved him. And for too many families, that is the reality that they face every single day. That's why I have worked so hard to secure $250 million in community violence intervention funding, and why I introduced the Break the Cycle of Violence Act. I was proud to see the community violence intervention programs included in the bipartisan Safer Communities bill that we passed last Congress, and that is now resulting in real community investments. In fact, my office just recently hosted a workshop with nonprofits and organizations and government entities here in Nevada on how we can tap our share of these resources. Our children must feel safe in school. Parents should feel safe sending them to school, and this epidemic of school shootings, along with gun violence in general, must come to an end. And I want to commend the work that you all are doing in this legislature to continue to make gun safety a priority. Some of the other landmark bills that we were able to see signed into law last Congress, like the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Law, the CHIPS and Science Law, are all providing real returns for Nevada as well. The Biden-Harris Investing in America agenda is creating jobs and churning our economy here in the Silver State, and I'm proud of the work that we'll continue to do. In fact, since President Biden took office, nearly $8 billion in private corporate investment has been made here in Nevada. And thanks to those legislative efforts that we passed in the last Congress and that the president signed into law, we are creating good-paying jobs, boosting U.S. competitiveness, and rebuilding our infrastructure. It's no longer infrastructure week. Infrastructure is finally coming to our communities. Nevada, as you all know, is also poised to be at the forefront of our nation's clean energy economy. Lithium is essential to powering the electric vehicles of today and the future, and corporations know that. So we look forward to working with these companies as they invest in Nevada and with Nevadans. My only ask is when I talk to any of them, focus on jobs, focus on small businesses, and make sure that the impact you make is sustaining and long-term. Don't come to Nevada if you're not willing to invest in the long-term benefit of our state. Our state's unemployment rate is at 5.5%. We've added 239,300 new jobs, and we've seen 128,000 new businesses created here in Nevada. And all across the state, we have seen 103 new projects funded thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Projects like the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada getting $6.7 million to buy hydrogen fuel cell electric buses to reduce emissions and to prevent health issues like asthma that disproportionately impact children and communities of color. And another $31 million investment in the Harry Reid International Airport, something that we will all need more of because of all the great sporting and entertainment events that are on deck over the next couple of years. Our legislation has also helped to lower real costs for Nevada families. Over 493,000 Nevada residents with Medicare will now benefit from the $2,000 yearly cap on out-of-pocket prescription drugs. This was my legislation that I've been pushing since 2019, and its real impact that's going to save seniors thousands of dollars a year. We also won against Big Pharma by capping insulin at $35 per month And now companies are extending the benefits so that a 10-year-old child who needs insulin can also have the life-saving medication that they need to stay alive. 96,000 individuals in Nevada signed up for the health insurance program through the Affordable Care Act during the last open enrollment period for 2023. And that is going to ensure that they benefit from up to thousands of dollars per year in savings from lower healthcare premiums. And I want to thank and commend this legislature and to ask you and the governor to continue to prioritize efforts to keep Nevadans connected to their health coverage, either on Medicaid or on the Affordable Care Act marketplace, so that they can see their doctor, maintain the continuity of their health care, and avoid more costly care in hospital emergency rooms. Thank you for your leadership on this important issue. Now, the average new homeowner in Nevada will also save about $181 annually, or about 9.7% on their utility bills if this body and local governments across our state use new grants to adopt the latest building energy codes. Nevada residents will be eligible to get 30% off solar panels, battery storage systems, heating and cooling upgrades, and weatherization, which can help them save hundreds of dollars every year on their energy bills. And it's estimated that about 75,000 additional Nevada households will install rooftop solar panels because of these new tax credits. Over 191,000 Nevada households can now access affordable and even free high-speed internet through the Affordable Connectivity Program investments that were also made as a part of this work. I recently had the opportunity to bring one of the FCC commissioners into my district and to speak directly with seniors at one of our housing facilities. Many of these residents are eligible, they just needed help to sign up. And so I'm here to remind people, if you're on SNAP benefits, school lunches, Social Security, if you receive Social Security checks or housing vouchers, then you're likely eligible for the benefit. And I want you to know that my staff is willing to partner with anyone to make sure that we get people connected to this program. Because when they're connected to the internet, they're connected for their health care, for their work, to help homework with their child or their grandchild, and most importantly, to improve their quality of life. I'm also happy to hear about the efforts to create a lottery system for the state of Nevada, which has gotten further than any other efforts in the years past. When I was in this body, I led the effort then to try to establish a lottery program for our state, and I'm proud to see the hard work of my good friend, Assemblyman Cameron Miller, in leading this bill and to dedicate the funding for something as important as investing in access to mental health care. I also want to applaud efforts to improve pay and benefits for state workers. As I mentioned earlier, we are all public servants, and so are many of our staff that support the work here in Carson City and for many of the work that is done throughout our state and local government offices. As career public service should be, it should be rewarded with good pay and good benefits, especially to keep from losing some of the great talent to the private sector. I also know that you all have been working really hard to make progress on some important issues around housing, in particular bills to address transitional housing to help deal with the homelessness crisis that is very real throughout parts of our state. I recently had the opportunity to join the U.S. vets for the ribbon cutting of one of these much needed facilities. In fact, it's the Betterment Community Bridge Housing Program, which is serving 46 residents at a time, 184 people per year. But it's more than just housing. It's getting them counseling and employment assistance and helping them get and keep these folks off the street and a roof over their heads. Our efforts on housing need to be laser focused. Residents in Nevada are really feeling the pinch of corporate speculators who are coming in and buying up homes, preventing veterans from using their VA to buy a home, or a first-time home buyer who might be a single mom, from utilizing some of the programs that we've all worked to encourage around home ownership. These corporate speculators are paying cash and pricing out working families. That's why I introduced H.R. 702, the Home Act, to address some of the issues that are making home buying that more challenging. And I know that the people in my district in North Las Vegas, in the Windsor Park neighborhood, are seeing their homes literally sink into the ground. So I applaud Senator Dina Neal for her proposal to help make sure that all the families in this area, mostly Black and Latino families, all continue to have a roof over their heads in neighboring communities. And on Monday, I'm leading efforts of the Tri-Caucus. We have the Congressional Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and the Congressional Asian Pacific Islander Caucus. I'm actually convening them for a summit on affordable housing this Monday in Las Vegas. And we look forward to hearing the recommendations that will help Nevadans and the policies that you all are advancing to actually make those policies part of a national conversation to confront the crises of affordable housing and homelessness in our country. We must continue to invest in our people. They need jobs. They need homes. Together, we can create the job training that they need, along with the child care our families require, to be able to work and achieve the American dream. We must focus on the economic success of our communities, where many of our constituents feel the most frustration towards government. They want to see our action on housing assistance, child care, and the child tax credit, and creating new jobs that improve their quality of life. It was this place, this very chamber, that gave me the mentoring and, yes, the tie that I needed to even come onto this floor. I'm extremely proud to continue to represent Nevada, and I want you to know that I will continue to work hard to make sure that Nevada and Nevadans have the support that they need. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you. I look forward to your continued partnerships to deliver for all Nevadans. God bless you.
Senator Krasner, please.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Senate and Assembly in joint session extend a vote of thanks to Representative Horsford for his timely, able, and constructive message.
Assemblyman Miller.
I second that motion.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. The appointed committee will escort Representative Horsford to the bar of the Assembly. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the joint session of the Senate and Assembly be dissolved.
Senator Hansen.
I second the motion.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. I declare the joint session dissolved. The assembly will come back to order. Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll bring the committee back to order. Thanks for hanging in there, folks. I believe we were on opposition testimony. And so if you are here in Carson City to give opposition testimony to AB 456, come on up and fill the chairs. I know we originally had about 10 people in the room, and it looks like we've got just 3 or 4 left, but we'll make sure that the minutes reflect that there were at least 10 people here. I'm going to step out briefly to move my car, but Senator Spearman will chair in the meantime. I will be back. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Madam Chair, Joe Guild, G-U-I-L-D. We worked up a head of steam during the recess, and we're ready to help get the committee back on track.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I am Peggy Egbuhay. That is P-E-G-G-Y-Y-G-B-U-H-A-Y. Egbuhay, just like it sounds. I'm going to introduce the Vice President of Safety and Operations for Union Pacific Railroad. She just came back from DC, meeting with the Federal Railroad Administration, and is calling in. So if we can hand it over to her, if that's possible. Senator?
BPS. BPS, do we have anybody on the line? So BPS, are you there?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is Joe Guild again. We've all had a conversation anticipating this hearing, so I won't repeat in great detail my brief laying out our concerns that AB 456 might be offending to the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, but I would like to make a couple of points for the record with your indulgence. So going back, and I know that the proponents of this legislation have talked about the old Arizona case, and it is old, but it is still good law. But in that case, the United States Supreme Court said this: ever since Gibbons versus Ogden, and that's a case from the early years of the United States Republic, the states have not been deemed to have authority to impede substantially the free flow of commerce from state to state, or to regulate those phases of the national commerce which, because of the need of national uniformity, demand that their regulation, if any, be prescribed by a single authority. And that's the premise of what I'm about to say. In the Assembly hearing and in the materials that are part of your package today are some papers from the proponents of this legislation, talking about references to the Federal Railway Safety Act, FRSA, and the ICC Termination Act, ICCTA, making the assertion that those acts have undermined the authority, if not rendered the Arizona case moot, as not being a violation of the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. We think the facts of this legislation are directly on point. And as an example, using the language that the proponents have brought before you, the FRSA states, among other things obviously, but laws, regulations, and orders related to railroad safety shall be nationally uniform to the extent practicable. And further, 49 U.S. Code Section 20106, entitled Preemption, says in pertinent part, a state may adopt or continue in force an additional or more stringent law, regulation, or order related to railroad safety. Don't disagree with that. When the law, regulation, or order does not unreasonably burden interstate commerce. And if you read my brief, you would realize that that, in my opinion, leads to the conclusion that there is a violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause. Further, the Interstate Commerce Termination Act gave authority and exclusive jurisdiction over rail transportation to the Surface Transportation Board, and in an order, a declaratory order, that board said that Section 10501B of the Act is intended to prevent a patchwork of local regulation from unreasonably interfering with interstate commerce. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that Section 11B, I think 1.1B of the Act, 1.28 of the bill, limiting train length, if passed by this legislature, would be a violation of interstate commerce and therefore be unconstitutional. The proponents of this legislation argue that there is a relationship between train length and derailments. And I'm going to turn the rest of my presentation over to my colleague, Ms. Egbuhai, who will talk about actual statistics related to that issue.
Thank you. Please begin. BPS is having problems identifying the person that you're talking about, so if they can stay on the phone, we'll make them last so that we don't get things confused. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And say their name. Yeah, if they say their name. Okay. If she says her name, then they can figure it out.
No,
right?
Do you need them to say? Do you need them to say their name?
Yeah. Yeah, can you, BPS, can you give instructions to, I'm sorry. what's her name?
Connie Roseberry.
To Connie Roseberry. Can you give instructions to Connie Roseberry?
Good afternoon, Chair. This is BPS. So Connie, if you have a person that you would like to testify, can we get their name so we can make an announcement to see if they are in the queue?
That is the person that's going to testify.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What's the last name again?
Roseberry.
Thank you, Chair. If you are Connie Rosemary on the line, please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand and take your place in the queue.
Peggy Egbuhai here, Madam Chair. So am I next? Not Connie, is that right? I just.
Good evening, this is Connie Roseberry. Can you hear me, Madam
Yes.
Chairperson?
We can, go ahead.
Am I okay to go, or should I?
Sure, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Thank you very much. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Connie Roseberry, Roseberry, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Safety and the Chief Safety Officer for Union Pacific Railroad. I've worked with Union Pacific for almost 20 years, primarily in the law department, and then the last 2 years I've spent as the Chief Safety Officer in the operating department. And I'm here today, this evening, to express Union Pacific's opposition to AB 456. Safety is a core value at Union Pacific and frankly at every railroad in this country. Our commitment to safety extends to our employees, the communities through which we operate, and the customers we serve. Mainline derailments are down almost 30% over the past 2 decades, and over the past 10 years, reportable injuries on our railroad have been reduced by 27%, contributing to making the past decade the safest for the rail industry in the history of this nation. Working collaboratively and proactively, the industry is working to further improve on that safety record. In the wake of the derailment at East Palestine, Ohio, the safety of the rail industry has been under intense scrutiny. Calls for intervention have well surpassed federal safety regulators and are now being discussed in state houses across the nation, including here in Nevada. While certainly understandable in response to the intense images shown on major media outlets almost daily, much more can be accomplished by having candid discussions about railroad safety and developing data-driven mitigation strategies. Everyone, and I repeat, everyone is on the same side of reducing and ultimately eliminating derailment. However, policy actions and bad legislation taken reflexively are unlikely to achieve meaningful safety benefits, and worse, could have a wide range of unintended economic and environmental consequences, as well as a negative impact on the free flow of commerce across state lines. When we look at derailment prevention, we focus our activities around 3 core areas: reducing human factor derailments, track-caused derailments, and mechanical-caused derailments. Because preventing derailments is complex and multifaceted, and every single derailment is different and has a multitude of contributing and causal factors, enacting safety regulations to reduce derailments is generally and most appropriately done by the Federal Railroad Administration, which is empowered by Congress to oversee and regulate all aspects of railroad safety. FRA is currently in the process of beginning rulemaking on a variety of issues that have been identified as causes in the East Palestine derailment, including the appropriate type, number, and location of wayside detection devices, which up to this point has been an emerging technology installed voluntarily by railroads and not yet regulatorily required. But understand, merely adding wayside detectors without knowing why or how or what benefit they can bring does nothing to improve railroad safety. The most impactful way to continue to improve safety is by using the data and the scientific methods when determining where detectors should be located, the type of detector which is best to use, and that takes into account the type of terrain and the different grades along the route. A state-by-state approach is not the best way to approach this issue or to improve safety. FRA has the expertise and the number of mechanical experts to regulate wayside detector systems and wayside detector communication systems in a meaningful way throughout the entire country across all rail networks, not just in one or a few states. With regard to train size, increases in train capacity are the result of a multifaceted approach to operational safety that includes very complex train makeup rules, simulations, and evolving management of in-train forces. Technology that didn't exist 10 or even 5 years ago is helping us and our network's operations teams model the safest and most appropriate way to build a train and get it from origin to destination.
Okay, ma'am, we're at about
provide
4 minutes and 30 seconds, going on to 5 minutes here. If you could please wrap up and also provide your comments in written form to the committee in case we miss any of your points, that would be much appreciated.
I'd just like to leave you with a train length law is not the solution to block crossings. by potentially solving one issue, you are creating many, many, many more. We continue to leverage technology to reduce or eliminate block crossings. We work on grade separations. We're looking at getting federal funds and matches to help in grade separation projects. Again, the train length law will not reduce or eliminate block crossing issues and potentially can make them worse. I respectfully ask that you oppose advancement of this of AB 456, and I will submit through my colleague Peggy in the room my full comments. And I apologize for taking over time. I just wanted to get those important points across to the committee. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We will come back here in the room and then go back to the phones for the rest of opposition testimony. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Again, Peggy Egbuhai. I am a Senior Director of Public Affairs for Union Pacific Railroad. I'm a proud employee of Union Pacific. This is my 29th year working for the railroad. I have experienced the total safety culture that we operate day in and day out at Union Pacific for the safety of our employees, myself included, our most precious commodity, as well as the communities in which we operate. In the state of Nevada, we have 153, I believe, hot box detectors, dragging equipment detectors, and hot wheel detectors in the state currently. And a little bit more about the safety culture. Anytime I'm out in the field, before I can start work and before I can join a work team on Union Pacific property, we perform a safety briefing to make sure that we are safe in what we're doing and don't cause any harm elsewhere. I am also required by Union Pacific rules to perform an inspection of all at-grade crossings in looking at the appurtenances to make sure that they're operating as intended. If I do find a defect, and I call the 1-800 number located on the emergency notification sign at every at-grade crossing in our system, which is about 20,000. In the state of Nevada, we have 257 public at-grade crossings, and the dispatcher slows or stops the train in response to that report. This is just an example of the total safety culture that I'm providing to you. I believe it, I live it, and it's been enforced and reinforced over the years. Our derailments are down, our employee injuries are down. We are a total safety culture industry. I live 700 feet away from a main line. I would have never moved my family and my children so close if I thought that the train industry was unsafe. We are the safest industry if you look at it in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm a proud employee. Our employees are proud employees and have a lot of passion for safety, and we love that. We have experts in the field in many different departments looking at different safety initiatives. We have a crossing assessment process. We built a model to determine what characteristics at crossings correlate with crossing accidents, and shared that with the state of Nevada and every other state in which we operate in an effort to reduce crossing accidents. Everything we do, safety is at our core. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Harris, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association. And it's kind of fun to be sitting up here with, another mode that, in a lot of ways is a competitor. But, really today, it's more of a collaboration with rail and trains, rails and trucks and intermodal and maritime. We all have to work together. We talk about the supply chain. Been a lot of talk about that lately. And I really think it's a misnomer because, of course, you think of this linear thing that is made of steel. But when you really think about it, what it looks like, it's more of a spider web. And it really is as delicate as spider silk. If one thing happens, it does have impacts throughout that entire web. And we've seen them over the last few years. We saw it with the rail strike that was going on, potential rail strike that was going on late summer and early fall of 2022. We opposed this bill today because of the train length, because we believe the trucking industry as rail, we operate under that same Interstate Commerce Clause, and we have that same federal preemption. There's a federal law that says no state can say a truck can't carry a 53-foot trailer or anything smaller than that, or have a limit under 80,000 pounds. That is dictated by Congress. They have purview there. You know, in Nevada and Utah, we have triple trailers. That was grandfathered in 1991 when Congress passed a law and they said, we're going to freeze longer combination vehicles in 14 states. Well, that was just a little bit of a problem because Arizona has a pretty important connector between Nevada and Utah, and that's I-15, 21 miles. And Congress had to pass a law to allow triple trailers to go on that length because, once again, it's not something Arizona could do on their own. You used to have trucks park at Railroad Pass, have to drop a trailer and come back and pick it up. We had to have Congress pass a law because those things are under their purview. So for those reasons, and because of the uniformity issues, we have the same thing in the trucking industry. We understand where the rail industry is coming on this bill, and we are opposed to it. Once again, happy to work with one of our collaborators and competitors. It's kind of funny. The trucking industry is one of the biggest customers of the rail today. So it is interesting how we all work together to move all the freight that we all need and rely on. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Joe Guild again. That concludes this panel's presentation, but I could take 1 minute because Mr. Carter and Senator Hansen talked about their grandfathers. My grandfather was a brakeman on what was called the Oregon Short Line near Pocatello, Idaho in the early 1900s. He slipped on some ice in the yard and the train ran over his leg. And as a result of that, the leg had to be amputated. In those days, there were no workers' compensation systems in the country, but the railroads had their own hospitals, and there was one in Ogden, Utah. They sent my grandfather there, and he rehabilitated and cut his leg off and whatnot. While he was there, his friends in Yerington, Nevada, put his name on the ballot to become the clerk treasurer of Lyon County, Nevada. And he won. So he came back to Nevada with a job. While he was the clerk treasurer of Lyon County, he studied law with a Methodist minister who also happened to be a lawyer in Yerington. And he passed the bar in 1914. So there's been a lawyer in the state of Nevada with the name Guild and Russell, by the way, since 1914. I would never have become a lawyer if it hadn't been for that accident. So my connection to the rail is probably better than some of these guys, if you want to go to family history. And I mean that in the most friendly manner possible. I've never said that in public, so I appreciate the indulgence, and thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hansen. Noting that it's 6:06 p.m.
All right, I'm just kidding. No, actually, real quick, one of the people testifying, I think it was Annette Mangus, stated that since 2000, there's been a 40% reduction in rail-related accidents. She's not here. I'd like to ask her that. That's 23 years. Last 23 years has been, you mentioned in your testimony that there's been a substantial reduction. Now, my question is, in the last 6 or 7 years, when you started to go up to 15,000-foot trains, has there been a spike since then in rail-related accidents?
Peggy Egbuhai, thank you. There has been a decrease in Union Pacific system of 21% from 2019 and 2022. In the state of Nevada, year to date, we've had 1 reportable derailment this year, 5 last year, 3 in 2021, 6 in 2020, and 8 in 2019.
Okay, well, honestly, that's not helpful because I have no idea. Is that going up, down? I mean, what it sounds like is that you guys have been better and better, even though the train lengths have been getting longer and longer. That's the impression I get sitting up here. But they're going to provide me some data. If you guys have some data too, because in my mind, you guys have safety boxes reasonably strung out. It seems like through Nevada at least on most of it. The question is there an enhanced safety risk when we go to really anything over 7,500 feet? And you got 6 or 7 years worth of data you should have now to either say, yes, there is, or no, there is not. Because if there's no, there's not, then I don't see any reason other than the inconvenience of certain crossings being blocked. But if there is, then there's something we may need to address on the safety side of it. So that's where I'm kind of looking at it from. So anyway, need to get some data from both sides perhaps on that and see, how significant, if there has been an increase, is it significant enough that we need to stop having 15,000-foot trains run through Nevada? If not, should we leave this sort of decisions up to the federal guys, more in line with the lawsuit thing? So I'm kind of torn as to which direction we should go on that. But I would like both sides to present some data to indicate, is there an enhanced problem with 15,000-foot trains, or is it pretty much the same? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Hammond, and then we'll go Vice Chair Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I kind of almost arrived at the same conclusion. To me, the biggest issue of this bill, and again, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of pieces and parts to it, but it comes back. There's one part in there that talks about train length, and we heard about 7,500, and I had to do the math to try and figure out how many miles. 7,500 feet is 1.42 miles. And then when you went up to 8,500 feet, and again, this all concerned me because we were talking about how fast it stops, the weight of it, how long does it block something. So all these things matter, right? 15,000 feet is 2.8 miles, 12,000 is 2.27 miles. But you still have at 7,500 feet, you still have almost 1.5 miles worth of train. So again, what's the safety issue? We've heard that the FRA, and I guess my question, couple here is, if the FRA has authority, right? It can actually say this is what we should do across the nation in order to make sure there's some uniformity when it comes to commerce. So it comes back to, is uniformity good or not? Because I think you all are saying uniformity is good, and I know years ago, Mr. Enos, we did have a bill here, and we talked about messing around with the length of vehicles and messing with the uniformity of transporting using big rigs, but then we heard that the cookie cutter is not always great. We heard from those proponents of the bill that one system doesn't always fit all. Look, I'm a big proponent of school choice, and I believe the same thing. Great argument, right? One system does not fit all. When it comes to schools, I don't know if you can make the same argument when it comes to transporting goods and services across the nation. I don't know. I think you can make a case for uniformity. Can you guys make that case? And is the if the FRA comes down with a ruling, do they have enough authority that it becomes universal across the nation?
Yes, Peggy Egbuhai, and that is true. If the FRA comes down with a ruling, then yes, we will have to abide by that ruling, and we're working with them in order to give them the data that we have relative to train length and our operations.
How much data do you guys pull in?
Well, we have a statistic that we get like 16 million data points from the detector systems that we have wayside today. And that's the information that is going to Omaha and being analyzed and used in different programs like Precision Train Builder, so that we build trains that operate over the course of the train's origin to destination safely.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Spearman.
Thank you, and indulge me if these questions have been asked already. So two things. I heard someone during the presentation talk about Donner Pass and the incline or the steepness of it. Whenever I drive that, it's like you can't put on your brakes, but you have to kind of keep tapping them because the incline makes you go faster. And to make matters worse, a couple of weeks ago, there was a speed trap. So talk to me about that and talk to me about what that looks like when you have a lot of cars behind you. You're going down a steep hill or something where controlling gravity is not in your power.
Peggy Igbuhai again, and I can certainly speak to some of the train operations and buff forces that are involved with going with grade, but we certainly have system instructions on different areas of our network that reduces the number of trains, the length of trains, the types of trains that we take over different routes. So we're self-regulating that today. I don't know what that specific route limitation may be, but I can certainly provide some information about that.
And so the other one is we heard testimony from someone that there was derailment in Sparks. Can you speak to that?
I would have to look at the date and pull down that report.
Got to say your name for the record.
Oh, sorry, Peggy Igbuhai. Sorry. But yeah, I can certainly provide a little bit more information once I get the FRA report that was provided for the Sparks incident.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. Why do you all feel that there are some train operators who feel like they don't quite have the training that they need to operate these trains safely, although you all are telling us everything's good? Can you try and reconcile those two things with people who are actually operating these trains saying we don't know necessarily how to handle the power in the middle or the back?
Peggy Igbuhai here. I can't tell you about their testimony or how they feel that way. I'm not a locomotive engineer. I know there is extensive training that goes on. We provide. I can definitely take back some of the testimony I heard today and provide a response to you, Madam Chair.
Do you all train your engineers on operating a train with just one locomotive in the front versus having one or multiple ones throughout the cars? Is there any difference in the training? Or is it just you get trained on how to run one locomotive in the front?
Peggy Igbuhai, the training specifics I'm not the expert at, and I will have to take that back and get you that response.
Okay. Do you know why train operators are no longer getting the information from the wayside detectors?
Peggy Igbuhai here. Yes, I wrote a letter that's part of what I delivered about the hot box detectors and what they call the talking capability. And the information has been silented because of noise interference and all the other important information that's going on over the radio. So the information provided to the train operators is for defects only and not for every time they go over the detectors at this point.
Is there no way to give them information when there is a problem occurring? Because from what I heard is that they're not even aware when things are getting hot, right? And so they're just, they don't have that information available to them. Not just, oh, you went over a detector, but that they don't have the indication when something is going wrong.
Peggy Igbuhai here. Yes, my understanding is the way it works is that they do get information when there is a defect from the hot box detector.
From a central location.
Okay, committee members, any more questions? All right. Well, oh, one more. Hold on. Sorry, Vice Chair Spearman.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm trying to remember, but if there's something going wrong, but I think we heard testimony that there was something going wrong on one of the trains and the ball bearings had burned out or something like that, but the engineer didn't know what was happening. So do you have redundant systems in place so that if the hot box doesn't alert them, something else does?
Peggy Egbuhai here. The information that we get from our hotbox detectors is shared with our headquarters, and then the dispatch would alert the crew as well.
And what's the timetable for that? How much time would it? And I'm just thinking, if you're getting ready to go down Donner Pass, you know, anything more than 30 or 45 seconds is probably too late. So how much time? I mean, I hear you say, so it goes from the hot box to headquarters, and then headquarters alerts the engineer. So what are we talking about in terms of time?
Peggy Egbuhai here. I will have to research and provide that information back to the committee.
All right, and you know, this committee's not here to tell you how to run your business, but it sounds like this is information they want to hear and have not felt like it is too much noise. And so I don't know if this was a response to complaints from other engineers, and we only have a small subset of them here in the room today, right? So there's nothing to say that their position is prevalent either, but it seems like there may be some who do in fact want to have this information real time. Okay. Further opposition testimony.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Moradkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is opposed to AB 456. I do appreciate the proponents of the bill meeting with the Chamber again to discuss this and for dialogue. However, the Chamber's comments tonight will be focusing specifically on the cost perspective. You've already heard extensive testimony regarding the safety and the interstate commerce clause, so I won't go into those components. Obviously, the Chamber's perspective is that rail shipping is considered one of the most cost-effective modes of transportation, especially for large volume traveling long distance, as you've heard. Rail shipping typically has a lower cost per mile than trucking, which of course lower costs benefit consumers. Our concern, of course, with this bill is the impact it will have on goods and consumers in Nevada if this bill is passed with the additional costs of having in labor and equipment and so forth, and balancing that with the policy. Thank you very much.
Chair Harrison Committee, Shelley Capurro with Kemper Kroll representing BNSFA Railways. And I'm just here to say, us too, in the opposition to AB 456, we support the testimony of Union Pacific and of the Trucking Association. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have the room in Las Vegas anymore, so we're just going to go back to the phones for any further opposition testimony. BPS, could you check on that for us, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 456, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, anyone here to testify in the neutral position on AB 456?
Good evening. For the record, Teresa Benitez Thompson, Chief of Staff to Attorney General Ford. Attorney General Ford extends his apologies. He did want to be able to read this testimony in person, but had another commitment to get to. It has been submitted to Nellis, and I will read it onto the record. Dear Chair Harris, members of the committee, Assembly Bill number 456 addresses various policies areas related to train safety. The Office of the Attorney General was party to litigation related to other train safety measures passed by the Nevada Legislature in 2019. Assembly Bill number 337 codified in NRS 705.415. In Transportation Division of International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers versus Buttigieg, the OAG, the Office of Attorney General, argued against lower federal rail safety standards that would have put the lives of both Nevada's rail workers and its residents at risk. The Attorney General's office serves Nevadans by arguing for and enforcing laws for the protection and benefits of its citizens, be it in Nevada's hardworking railmen and women or the residents of the communities bisected by necessary rail freight that provides Nevadans with their jobs and goods and that they need to provide for their families. This office will always advocate for and defend laws that are found to keep Nevadans safe, as well as keeping industry successful and supporting Nevada's diverse economy. If AB 46 becomes law, if this legislature decides what that policy is and passes law, then the Office of Attorney General stands ready to defend that policy and to protect the lives and livelihoods of Nevadans.
Thank you. Okay, any neutral testimony on the phone?
If you would like to testify in neutral for AB 456, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay. Assemblyman Carter.
Chair Harris and members of the committee, thank you very much for coming back and getting this all on the record. And I'm not here to rebut that. I'm sure you'll get lots of stuff put in from both sides on rebuttal. I just want to point out that, like was asked, in Kansas, it's an 8,500 foot length that has just passed in March. It was carried by the majority party and it was passed by bilateral support in the Senate in Kansas. And there's a reason it is happening in state houses rather than in the federal government. There was action taken to enhance train safety, and in 2018, that was rolled back for political purposes, and so we can't trust those agencies that are at the whim of the political weather vane to protect the citizens of our state. So that's the whole purpose of this right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on AB 456 and open it up for public comment. Anyone here in Carson City for public comment? All right, BPS, can we check the phones for public comment, please?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the lines are open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide comment at this time.
All right, thank you so much. With that, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.